embark on something that is much bigger than yourself. So check your ego at the door.
Oh, he looks so good. Sorry guys, just give me a second. It's the longest video I've watched of him. Just give me a second.
That's what you signed up for?
You know, well, no, I didn't sign up for anything. I just married the love.
Lack of emotion and the lack of drive that is coming out of Turning Point USA to figure out who killed him. That's what their reaction is. So, like, they came to, okay, this is so unnatural, the reaction of these individuals who were so close to him, that the more logical, sensible conclusion is that they actually know where Charlie is and he's perfectly alive. Yeah, that is how absurd they are acting. Just move on. Just donate to Turning Point USA. This is what Charlie would want. And that's his legacy.
Just nickname her like the Israeli Widowmaker. Like, at this point, can we just start going with that fucking nickname? I think that's gonna stick. The Israeli Widowmaker, Mrs. Erika Kirk. What do you guys think? Can we make that one stick? I want to know what your best nickname for Erika Kirk would be. This bitch is fucking nuts. And I don't know about you guys, but Ian was right. Fucking weird, right? Who the fuck says that? Did you guys read Ian's tweet? He goes, I hope if I die, my wife waits a little bit longer before
When Erika Kirk sat down for her latest interview, no one could have anticipated the statement that would shift everything. Her tone was measured, her presence composed, yet there was something unshakably raw beneath her calm exterior. Without naming anyone directly, she spoke softly about carrying truths that had never been told, and how real healing only begins the moment you stop pretending. It was a brief sentence, but the weight behind it was unmistakable. Those few words seemed to pierce through the surface, unlocking an unseen door, one hidden behind the smile, behind the flawless image the world had come to admire. For the first time, it felt as if Erika wasn't just speaking to an audience. She was freeing herself from the silence that had held her for far too long.
When Erika Kirk came in as leader, I don't even know how to explain it. The vibe just shifted, like instantly. And then she starts bringing in all these new people, total unknowns. No social media, no LinkedIn, no nothing. It's like they just appeared. Everyone in the office is joking, well, half joking, that they're all spooks. And honestly, it fits. So people start digging around just to see who we're really working with. And it gets creepy fast. Her mom works for some Israeli defense firm, something to do with missile systems, like the Iron Dome level stuff. Her dad literally wrote the book about how to integrate private companies into the intelligence community. And Erika, she loves to brag about her connections. She'll say stuff in meetings like, if I want to know something about someone, I can have it by morning. Mossad doesn't sleep. Then she'll flash that megawatt smile like she's joking, but she's not. Everyone knows she's not. Does she actually work for them? I mean, yeah, everyone thinks so. She's hinted at it herself. And now, the whole office feels wired, Slack channels are dead. People don't say what they're thinking anymore, everyone's paranoid, like the walls are listening. Maybe they are.
The way she spoke, her confidence, her calm yet uncanny composure, gave many the impression that Erika knew far more than she was willing to reveal. Every pause, every subtle expression hinted at truths she chose not to voice. For countless observers, it quietly confirmed a long-standing suspicion that something behind their perfect image had never quite added up. Their picture-perfect love story, it seemed, was nothing more than a carefully built facade. Not a game of blame, nor a scene of chaos, but a painfully honest reflection of what had been hiding in plain sight. It felt like one of those documentaries about marriages that appeared flawless from the outside, the glamorous smiles, the public affection, until one quiet confession shattered the illusion, exposing the cracks everyone had tried so desperately to conceal. And in that moment, silence spoke louder than any words ever could.
Defense wants to ban cameras in the courtroom. How do you feel about that?
There were cameras all over my husband when he was murdered.
Including cameras by TPUSA, high-resolution cameras from the back and from the side, and we haven't seen any of that high-resolution footage, which might put to rest some of the conspiracy theories a lot of people have problems with. So yeah, there were cameras all over him, including TPUSA approved cameras.
There have been cameras all over my friends and family mourning.
She invited cameras into her most private moments, including the creepy casket scene. So yeah, even she has invited cameras into her private life, as she claims to have been mourning.
There have been cameras all over me.
There are cameras all over you. You are a public figure, and you took the position as the CEO of TPUSA, one of the biggest financial political organizations in human history. And there should be cameras all over you, Erika. I mean, you are pushing the government's official story, and anytime somebody pushes the government's official story, and historically the official story is not the truth, the more cameras, the better, because sunlight is the best disinfectant, right?
Analyzing my every move, analyzing my every smile, my every tear. We deserve to have cameras in there. Why not be transparent? There's nothing to hide. I know there's not, because I've seen what the case is built on.
We know the government uses cameras against us every day to surveil us, to track our every movement. We also know that TPUSA is using geo-tracking tech partners to harvest data from the hundreds of thousands of people who come to Charlie Kirk to honor him at his memorial service, for example. So as TPUSA and the new CEO of TPUSA profit handsomely from the face of a dead man appearing on merchandise, it shouldn't be a surprise that the people want to surveil their government and people who continually promote the narratives of government. And I do want to mention that there does now appear to be tears forming in the eyes of Erika Kirk, whereas before we just didn't see them. And call me jaded, but that just makes me wonder what's in that thing right there. Could it be an aid to cause her to tear up? I don't know.
And when Erika's tears first appeared on camera, viewers across the room and across the internet paused, unsure whether the moment should be received with sympathy or greeted with a measure of doubt. Up until that instant, she had rarely displayed such an open, unguarded expression, and for many people the sight felt unfamiliar. Some watched and felt moved, convinced the emotion was raw and honest. Others tilted toward suspicion and asked themselves if those tears had been timed, rehearsed, or even calculated. Some joked that perhaps she had studied acting. But when you step back and consider the full timeline of Erika's public words and gestures, each small detail begins to align and form a picture that looks different from the one the public was taught to accept. To grasp why this shift in perception happened, we must return to the start and reconsider the official version of events, alongside the subtle hints that were missed by casual observers. From a distant vantage point, Erika and Charlie Kirk once looked like the quintessential power couple, united, ambitious, anchored in shared conviction and faith. They presented themselves as embodiments of devotion, family values, and a common mission. Their public images suggested a bond so solid it could not be easily broken. But then Erika's recent comments forced a new reading. Behind the bright smiles and glossy photographs, the private life they led may not have been the tranquil portrait their followers believed. In any inquiry, the first rule often is to follow the incentives. Ask who benefits when a story is presented in an exceptionally neat form. When a public life appears too perfect, it is worth wondering if someone else is adjusting the lights. After the incident, Turning Point USA, the organization Charlie helped build, underwent a rapid transformation. The funding surged, the brand's prominence expanded, and the group's media footprint grew substantially. At the center of that change, suddenly and unmistakably, stood Erika. She moved from the margins into the foreground, and with that shift came a new reputation, renewed influence, and a wave of public admiration. On its face, none of that is illegitimate. But in political and media circles, such dramatic reassignments of power and visibility invariably invite the old question: opportunity or design? Is this a natural succession, or is there a plan behind the public pivot? Whatever conclusion you favor, one fact is undeniable. Erika is no longer merely recounting Charlie's story. She is actively shaping it, As the narrative gets retold from her vantage, there is a real possibility that the edition the public receives will be a version refined for clarity and impact. If you have an alternative reading, offer it. Small unanswered questions often lead to significant revelations. Behind every smile and every carefully chosen phrase, there is an unsaid beat, and sometimes a single sentence carries the weight of an untold history. That sense of an unsaid beat is exactly what happened when Erika stepped to the podium to introduce Vice President J.D. Vance. In that moment, no one could have predicted the reaction that would ripple outward. She smiled, glanced at the front row, and said softly, "No one can replace my husband. But I see some of him in J.D. Some of him." The words were low, but the echoes were unmistakable. For many viewers, it stopped being a tribute and began to feel like a deliberate message. She added, "I feel fortunate to introduce him today because he understands the fight we're facing, and he can say things in a way I sometimes cannot." The combination felt genuine and yet difficult to place. Some described it as the meeting of kindred spirits. Others suspected a more intimate, nameless connection. Online reaction arrived like a tide. Some comments were sarcastic, some defensive, and many simply admitted the moment felt unusual. One biting remark, recirculated widely, said, "If I were her husband, I would ask my lover to wait a little longer before saying those things." That barb became a viral artifact. It was cruel and it spread rapidly. No one could say for certain what Erika meant in that instant, but a large number of onlookers chose an interpretation that suggested her words did not come from the raw shock of new grief, but from someone who had felt a widening distance long before the public tragedy. When the archives were revisited, seemingly innocuous moments acquired fresh significance. The 4 smiles shared at events, the clipped responses to questions about marriage, the professional, almost colleague-like looks between them, small cues that had once been excused as public reserve or the strain of busy schedules, began to add up. Those details, overlooked at the time, took on a different resonance when viewed through the lens of later remarks. Perhaps the foundation between them had been quietly cracked before the public catastrophe. If so, what followed would feel less like an unpredictable rupture, and more like the culmination of a slow drift. As people reviewed interviews and old clips, a pattern emerged. Erika's loneliness did not begin after Charlie's disappearance. It had been present for a long time, soft and persistent. In one conversation, she remarked, "I had to learn to comfort myself even in a noisy house." The line reads as kind and almost philosophical, but in context, it sounded to many like a confession of distance rather than mere sadness. Those who once saw Erika as reserved now reconsidered whether that reserve was instead the hallmark of someone accustomed to solitude. Her calm did not always look like shyness. It began to look like the characteristic of someone who had lived for some time without the intimacy most marriages promise. Emotional isolation does not appear in a single day. It grows quietly, a little at a time, until it becomes a void that cannot be filled. When a person sits in the quiet for too long, they begin, often without intending to seek solace in unexpected places. Connections form in small, private exchanges, late-night conversations, knowing glances, an exchange of words that mean more than they show. When the public later noticed an ease between Erika and a particular public figure, the observation did not necessarily imply a dramatic romance. There was nothing flamboyant or unseemly, only a natural closeness. A glance lingered slightly longer than others. A pair would lean in across a crowded room. A small nod or a private smile seemed to say more than the surrounding chatter. Those kinds of affinities do not begin with a single cinematic moment. They accumulate from silence, from shared confidences, from the sense of finally being heard. For someone who has endured emptiness, a new person who listens can begin to occupy space that was once reserved. All boundaries can begin to blur. So when the tragic event occurred and those two figures stood together afterward, an increasing number of observers read that proximity as the product of a long, developing intimacy rather than of simple coincidence. Public expectation after loss follows a familiar script. Withdraw, grieve privately, step away from the microphone. But Erika's trajectory did not follow that script. She returned to public life composed, steady, and unexpectedly serene. At memorials, she stood with a clarity that surprised many, a voice that did not falter, tears that seemed measured, an overall presentation of someone not undone, but resolute. Some praised her as a model of strength and faith. Others felt a biting unease. Her public messages became concise reflections about gratitude and the work of letting go. There were no sprawling laments, no long absences. Instead, a steady, almost practiced tone of healing and acceptance that did not read like the immediate shock one expects after profound loss. From those observations sprouted a new line of conjecture. Was she simply an exemplar of inner fortitude, or had she been preparing herself privately for this sort of moment? Fans insisted upon the first reading. Skeptics embraced the second. Archival interviews that once sounded philosophical were now harvested for lines that read like foreknowledge. Sometimes peace doesn't come from answers. It comes from accepting that some things will never be explained. On its surface, a calm meditation. In the heated context of speculation, another piece of the puzzle. As the debate hardened online, two camps formed. One group lauded her resilience, viewing her public composure as a testament to faith and character. The other suspected an earlier resignation, a pre-existing acceptance that made the public display feel rehearsed rather than raw. For those who felt uneasy, the memorial service functioned less like a step toward recovery and more like a closure already perfected. The dress arranged just so, the hands placed on the podium with the practiced grace of someone who has rehearsed a public farewell. The image of calm made some viewers doubt whether the moment was shaped more by preparation than by fresh sorrow. Amid the churn of commentary, one absence rang painfully clear: the silence of Charlie Kirk's parents. When a public figure dies, family members typically step forward to contextualize, to lament, to thank supporters, or to correct speculation. In this case, Charlie's parents offered none of it. There were no interviews, no public statements, no evident engagement with memorial events. At first, their withdrawal was assumed to be a natural retreat into private grief. But as days became weeks, that silence took on a different quality. It no longer read as overwhelmed sorrow, but as a deliberate refusal to participate in the narrative being shaped for others. Silence can be a language unto itself. In a world that monetizes spectacle, choosing not to speak is sometimes an act of resistance. Some observers argued that Charlie's parents were fiercely protecting their private memories from the distortions of public storytelling. Others suspected that their absence signaled disapproval, that they quietly rejected the public version of events and did not wish to be enlisted as witnesses to a narrative they did not recognize. They stood apart from the ceremonies and the interviews, withholding approval in a manner as unmistakable as any public statement could. Juxtapose that silence with Erika's carefully chosen words, and the murmurs suggesting she was not the only one keeping secrets. And the silence acquires a new texture. It begins to look less like stunned grief, and more like a boundary drawn between what is known privately and what is being offered publicly. At that point, the public sees not only a widow's composure and a movement's reinvigoration, but also a family refusing to be assimilated into a story they did not author. When Erika reappeared, she was frequently seen with a certain man who had been present in her orbit long before the tragedy. The pairing did not look accidental. There was a measured proximity in the way he stood, not too close, not too distant, but definitively protective. The tone of his speech, always careful and deferential, suggested familiarity shaped over time. Camera angles that captured their exchanged looks revealed not two people discovering a bond in immediate grief, but two who had long navigated an emotional terrain together while keeping it private. Those images encouraged viewers to connect earlier fragments, the offhand remarks, the private smiles, the pattern of reserve. The phrase Erika once used about seeking emotional security outside the place where she was expected to keep it gained fresh clarity. The story that unfolded was no longer only about sudden bereavement. It became a tale of pre-existing intimacy revealed in the aftermath of loss. This is not intended to besmirch Charlie's memory or rewrite his legacy. It is intended to point out that public images can be polished veneers, and that the narratives offered to the public are often simplified for consumption. Relationships, especially in the public eye, can be maintained for appearance as much as for affection. Those closest to the truth sometimes speak up, and sometimes choose silence to protect what they know. Erika did not have to issue confessions to change perception. Her measured phrases and the quiet signals she sent were enough to prompt many to re-examine what they believed. The love story presented to the world no longer matched the one she seemed to inhabit. So the question persists: has Erika told her truth, or is she preparing the audience for another chapter? Is the silence of Charlie's parents a shield for private memory, or a silence kept to conceal inconvenient truths? The media landscape complicates everything. In moments of public tragedy, cameras and commentary rush in, hungry for a coherent narrative. Editors trim footage for dramatic beats, headlines compress nuance into provocation, and algorithms amplify what provokes an emotional response. There is nothing novel about this machinery, but its consequences are profound. Private sorrow is quickly translated into public meaning, and the version of events that gains traction often depends more on media mechanics than on the full measure of human complexity. It is reasonable to ask whether a widow's swift return to public life is always opportunism. It is also reasonable to consider whether a composed public presence can be a deliberate strategy for survival. Grief appears in many forms: silence, public performance, relentless activity, or quiet withdrawal. And the public seldom permits all those forms equal respect. We want grief to fit the models we understand. When someone's conduct diverges, it breeds judgment. Faced with ambiguity, the better approach is curiosity rather than condemnation. Rewatch the footage and listen for inflections. Consider what silence might mean, and why someone closest to the story would choose to remain mute. Observe the incentives, the institutional shifts, and the flows of influence that follow public moments. Where evidence exists, let it direct our conclusions. Where it does not, temper speculation with restraint. Ultimately, the central tension here is not a simple moral verdict, but the harder task of separating image from interior life. Public figures necessarily perform. Their gestures carry meaning to audiences that have the right to look and to question. The duty to question must be balanced with the duty to avoid cruelty and to honor the limits of what can be known without proof. Sometimes the most revealing truth is not shouted from a stage, but found quietly in the places people choose to leave unspoken. Watch closely. Ask pointed questions. Stay aware of how headlines shape your view. And remember that often the smallest, least notable moments are the ones that open the doors to the biggest secrets. Share below. Share below.